Well, good evening and welcome to you. I'm David Williams. Well, we continue our post-mini budget analysis of this year's medium-term budget. It's been a year since South African students highlighted their concerns to the government about accessibility, affordability, transformation in South Africa's higher education sector. And as student leaders' efforts increase in the demand for free education, we've seen an increase in violence, university unrest and rejection of any solution that does not mention or include the concept of free education. Well, did the medium-term budget today read to the satisfactory side of this debate for all the students? In studio with me is Mzwanele Ntswanti, who is from the SRC in charge of projects, media and campaigns at Wits University, and Thuto Nthulenyane, who is at the SRC also at Tshwane University of Technology. Both serving, I think, the last term on the council. Evening to you, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
So, Thuto, let's start. Just give us a bit of context, what you've studied, what you've been involved with from an SRC point of view, because it's been a busy year for student politics.
Yes, my name is Thuto Nthulenyane, as you have highlighted. I study human resource management at Tshwane University. I'm doing my master's in human resource. Just to also correct a statement, I'm the former Deputy Secretary General of TUT.
Okay.
Yes, but due to the unrest, I think I want to first start and speak onto the nine
all right, in a moment, but let's just get your little brief background as well.
Okay, I'm Mzwanele, I'm at Wits. I'm currently doing my honours in economic science. It's been an eventful year in higher education. It's been interesting. I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. There's many things to learn. There's a lot to speak about, and there's a lot of things to be concerned about, and there's a lot of things I think as a country we need to speak about and see if we can possibly pave a way forward for the future. So there's opportunity, I think, for the country to actually sit down and review its policies and its decisions and perhaps foresee a better future for all South Africans.
Okay, well, budgets are about politics, but they're especially about money. Big picture, let's just take a big picture response to what Pravin Gordhan, the Minister, said today, and from your perspective, from the student perspective, from the university perspective, fees perspective, what's your response?
Obviously, the biggest perspective from the student is going to be the allocation of the coffers to student funding, which the Minister made an announcement of 9 billion and also the 8 billion for the missing medal, which throughout there has always been the concession from students on how are they going to be assisted. But as you know, that our call as students has always been the call for free education. Yes, we are seeing the efforts that are being made by the minister trying to assess and try to close the gap of the financial deficit that is within the educational sector. I don't think from the student background we can be at the point whereby we are accepting what the minister has brought for us, because is not addressing our call, which is the free education. He's added 9 billion from the 16 billion which is announced February, which is over the 3 years. But now the question that we should also ask ourselves is that when the minister answers the question, because with the 9 billion is also adding to NSAS. He's speaking unto NSAS, he's not
That's
speaking...
the student financial aid scheme.
Yeah, the student financial scheme. He's not speaking unto the free education. To us, it becomes a problem, because the reason we as students were calling for free education is because we want a sustainable solution, and is that we are tired of seeing ourselves going back to streets.
All right, big picture from you. Let's hear from your perspective.
Yes, I think that leading to today, we had a lot of expectations for the minister, and perhaps he did not really live up to the expectation of the students, and nicely so. I mean, one person would have thought that when he was opening, you would have thought that this person is going to say some things, quoted the very first budget medium-term budget speech that was made, and how the medium-term budget should speak to the environment in which the country finds itself, and possibly look at the opportunities that are there and project for a better future. But then he then left all of that. He didn't therefore speak about the environment in which the country finds itself. He then spoke about the same things that he had spoken about in February when he was doing the national budget. So, I mean, what I would have expected as a student leader in the current climate in the country and in the higher education sector was the minister to actually tap into the reprioritization of expenditure. I mean, he listed about 15 ministers that he's looking into, and not a single name of Blade Nzimande came into the picture. So you then get worried. Oh wow, it's an interesting one. You know, Blade's sector has been in tatters for the past 2 years, and not a single thing was said about him. So that's one. Reprioritization of expenditure. I would have expected that we will hear something about that, and then we would have also. We know that he's the minister, and probably can't necessarily proclaim on free education for the country, but we would have expected him to give some sort of a roadmap into how we can possibly decrease the cost of higher education in the lack of better words for him, and how possibly he could increase the subsidy for higher education. But instead, they are continuing to treat the symptoms of the greater structural problem that we have in the sector.
He has made the point that access to higher education has increased. He hasn't, I don't think he said today, but the point has been made elsewhere, that government spending on universities has actually dropped. The government subsidy has dropped.
Yeah.
So it's more people at university, there's less money coming from government, which puts more pressure on the student fees, which are about 20% of the total. So, I mean, he's saying we have put more in, and now February, as you say, and now they're promising more. How much, where must they find additional money? So your reprioritization of expenditure.
Coming to reprioritization of expenditure, we know that basically our government spends more money in the military. They invest more money in the military that doesn't do anything, or which we cannot even say where exactly do they go and have war and so forth. So what also they should do, I was expecting to see some of tax rates, especially coming from the wealthy, coming from the corporation, to be mentioned in the budget speech, trying to assist the educational sector, but we didn't see that. But rather we're told about the increasing of the government revenue over the years to come. But again, we're not being told where exactly that those funds are going to come from. So I think at some point, even the Minister of Finance was a bit dodgy in some instance as far as the educational sector is concerned. So my concern is that, as you also have mentioned, that throughout the year the government subsidy has decreased. During 2000, it was around 50%, and now has decreased to around 39%, if I'm not mistaken, which is also something that we need to revisit as the country and see how exactly we can increase that to 50%, so that we can reduce the burden from
that would be key. Before you talk about reprioritization, because you started with it, I just want to mention about defence. I mean, most of the defence money is either on equipment or personnel. And people say the army, I mean, saying that we don't want an army or a defence force or a navy or an air force is a big thing to say. I think the sums have been done. I'm just throwing this in. That even if you took away the defence budget from defence, it's still not going to solve the problem.
We are not saying that they must take it off. Certainly, each and every country needs a defence. It must be there. That goes
underfunded too.
Yes, that goes without saying. But what we are saying, that there must be reprioritization of how the money is being allocated. You understand? You cannot take a large amount of money and fund it into something that doesn't add value that much value to the country.
If you look at the Defence Force, you speak to the Defence Force, they are underfunded to the point where they're actually falling apart. So if you have a Defence Force, you've got to pay something.
So I mean, what we need to really focus on, and this is why also Blade needs to do some work. Because for instance, in higher education, yes, it's expensive, yes, the fees are going up and so forth, but we need to ask, what are the cost drivers? You know, what makes it so expensive? You know, the higher education, that we can certainly not even take the load ourselves. So we need to ask those questions as well. What are the cost drivers, so that we can be able to make sure that what is it that we're funding. For instance, what he's saying is that we can give money to defense, but what are they defending? You know, so we can give money to basic education and have a 78% pass rate of people, and get people that are bachelor's pass, and then have a 60% dropout in higher education. So it means that we did not prepare these students, these learners in basic education for higher education. We can then speak about national health. I mean, the things that the minister was listing here. We can speak about national health and say that, but your roadmap of national health has passed the second stage, but we have not seen anything. So where is the money going? You know, those are the real concerns that we raise as students, you know. So when we say that come into the higher education sector, see what you can possibly fix, because currently the money that you are throwing at NSFAS is not assisting us. I mean, the money that they threw to NSFAS at the beginning of the year came late into the system around June, you know, if it came entirely. But the problems of NSFAS exist, and we still are never going to accept NSFAS, even with the new model that they've come up with, and they married banks, and then they started to think that they can give students from the missing middle class to loans that are supposedly affordable. The problems that have happened in higher education as a result of underfunding. So the money that they're throwing, yes, is growing in nominal terms, but it's not growing in real terms. So what needs to happen is that they need to reprioritize and also audit universities to check as to what drives the cost of universities. But also they must know that the influx of students, that means the access that has increased, we are grateful for it, but it has led to serious, severe problems in higher education. Issues of accommodation, issues of food, issues of flowing of libraries, as well as laboratories, classrooms, and what have you. And that will work on the detrimental of the quality of higher education. And it must be understood that when we call for free education, we call for free, quality, and decolonized higher education.
Well, that's what we want. Come back to our special coverage after the mini budget. Still on the desk with me, Mzwanele Ntswanti, who is in the Wits SRC, responsible for projects, media and campaigns, and Thuto Nthulenyane, who is former Deputy Secretary General of the SRC at the Tshwane University of Technology. Thuto, to come back to you, Mzwanele finished off last time. You've talked about reprioritizing, taking money from other places. Even if you could do that, and there was money available to be reprioritized and moved around, it's going to take time. So in the light of, you know, it's like a big ship that's going, you can't turn it around immediately. Even if the government wants to, it's going to take time to reallocate. There's committed money, there are budgets that already are there. So isn't it time for the Fees Must Fall campaign, leaders generally, to say, okay, we've made big gains here, we've got acceptance in principle. Isn't it time to say, okay, let's call peace here and let's see commitments, but let's stop fighting?
That depends on which perception you're looking at. Because when we speak about reprioritization, we're not only speaking about reallocating funds to certain departments, but we're also speaking about bringing regulations on the irregular expenditures that we see in departments. One of the problems that we also have in our country is also the illicit flows of funds within certain departments. That also needs to be looked into. If we can have a strict regulations of funds within numerous departments within the state, that could also help the government to accumulate more funds to try and assist the educational sector. But the reason that we find ourselves in a space that we have a shortage of funds, I don't think really it comes from the perception that there is no money in South Africa. You know, it pains students to go and watch news, and you see that a certain department has exploited a certain number of funds, and that funds never added any value within that department or within the government.
If you pull them all together, they're not going to solve the problem.
No, I once came across a charter that summoned all those funds. Actually, according to that charter that I once saw, they could sustain free education for 3 years.
Okay. Mzwanele, let me ask you, is it not time tactically? You know, in a way, the Fees Must Fall got an astonishing victory at the end of last year. Yes. It's continued to make. Isn't it time to negotiate, play different tactics?
So we must understand greater politics here. This is an old call. It's a 1948 resolution of the ANC. We as SAS core students, and you know, it's a more than 15 years old call for free education. What happened last year is just a blow up of a situation that the government has been deciding to slide it, you know.
They just keep putting it off.
You know, for many reasons, of course. I mean, we don't know. But what basically my colleague is saying is that what students cannot withstand is the bailout of SAA. It's the bailout of ESCOM. It's
I think there are a lot of other people who are not students who would agree with that.
It's a drama of SAPC. Ordering trains that are bigger than the railways. Yeah. The FIFA World Cup that did not deliver and give any sort of nuclear deals. What students can't take anymore is the same things of we're going to enter into Commonwealth games and we're not getting anything in return. I mean, if you invest in a World Cup, you must have something in return. Job creation and infrastructure and what have you.
But you haven't answered my question. So tactically, isn't it time still?
So to then say that tactically, fees must fall, students and leaders must see to it that it's time to surrender. I think it will be wrong.
Not to surrender, but to pause.
To pause, to stop, to retreat, whatever the case may be. I think it would be wrong for us to stop this pressure point, for the government to make serious concessions into the greater picture of higher education, because it's not merely higher education. There's inequalities to be redressed. There's social cohesion that needs to be kept intact. There's many things that higher education needs to do for us. However, let's go back to say that we're not necessarily saying that the government must take money out of nowhere or some department must be more important than others. We're saying government, well, all we're asking is that you move the subsidy from 38% to back to where it was, to 50%.
Even if the government agreed to do that, my point is that it can't do it before the end of the year. We've got an academic year which is now running out, and you're going to have a lot of students, poor, rich, in between, who will have a disaster now.
I wouldn't disagree with you on that, but
so as a student, important to give them a chance to complete the year.
It is important, but we must also take into lesson where this country comes from. You know, many sacrifices in this country were made. You understand? And we cannot, we as student leaders of today, absent from ourselves from making those sacrifices. By the way, today I myself as Thuto, I do not know anything about the apartheid educational system, which is Bantu education, mainly because someone took off to the street and sacrificed, so that I do not have that.
Yeah, but so aren't you telling the students who may not agree with you, you're telling them to sacrifice?
It is coming with sacrifice, because in the midst of this insurance, we are seeing students not going to class. We are seeing students protesting. Students are not going to class. You know, it's just the perception that has been thrown onto the media that student leaders are coercing students not to attend classes. That's not how it is. Students are voluntarily actually not going to classes. What is happening outside there is that student leaders are being arrested and students are leading themselves.
Okay, but what about the guys who want to write? Do you have the right to make them sacrifice their year? And some of them are poor.
I mean, certainly not. But I think we need to stop this massaging and this making people feel like we're going to be heroes once we graduate and so forth and save our families. Because one point we must correct from the minister in presidency, he said more than 1 million students that are writing matric. That's not true. Not more than 1 million students write matric. About 600,000 students write matric. Do you know how much of those go to universities? Less than 100,000. So that's where we are.
That's a lot of students coming in.
Secondly, they have an understanding of that the university academic calendar goes up into December and that's it. Universities start mid-Feb and they can start early March as well. So the university academic calendar is the most flexible calendar in all the calendars that you may find. So we must not try to dump the student movement of a genuine student call for free and quality education to issues such as million students that need to come into the sector. You are going to ruin the academic care, even though we as responsible student leaders here understand the importance of completing the academic care.
All right, we just have to stop there because we have run out of time. That's Mzwanele Ntswanti of the Wits SRC, where he's in charge of projects, media and campaigns, and Thuto Nthulenyane, who is former Deputy Secretary General of the SRC at Tshwane University of Technology.
Yes.